Let's bring our palms together at our heart center. Close your eyes softly and relax the space between your eyebrows. And let's take a deep breath in and fill up your lungs. As you exhale, make your exhale double the length in your inhalation. So breathe out, just double the length. Keep going, keep going. And again, on the big inhale, fill up your lungs. And then as you exhale, double the length of your exhale. Just let the breath through your nostrils. And then one more time, inhale. And your exhalations, double the length, let them go through. Release your hands down onto your thighs, onto your knees, and open up your eyes. And welcome to Astro Yoga Chat. I'm Kate.
I'm Natalie. Hello. Good to be back. How are you, Kate?
I'm good. Thank you. Summertime. It's summertime. You always look so beautiful.
Thank you so much. So it's summertime, but we're talking about Capricorn, which is actually in winter time for us in the northern hemisphere. And it's the 10th sign. It's a sign connected a lot in, let's say, normal Western astrology with business, ambition, government, organizing, organizations, being successful, very serious. And when we look at evolutionary astrology, it has a lot to do with forming boundaries, the need for protection, like the bark of a tree or the room that is protecting the baby or the parents protecting the child. So a need for protection. And on the other side, it also has to do with something that is like materializing, or they say to freeze in time or crystallize, because it's connected with Saturn. Saturn is the Lord of time. So something is happening in time, it's manifesting, and our relationship to it. So it has to do with reflecting backwards on something, because Cancer is on the other side. So our emotional connection to something happened in the past, we reflect on it. So it has to do a lot with an internal process of processing certain things in time. And also a very nice sentence, it's learning the wisdom of time. Yes. So maybe let's start from the most obvious part of this need, this instinct to form boundaries, where I have to say right away, I'm a person with very poor boundaries. So my instinct is not very strong, but that's like my life's lesson. So we need boundaries. Obviously, we do.
When I taught my yoga class this morning, the whole theme is on boundaries, and you can't make this up since we're talking, since Capricorn, boundaries, you can't make it up. But and in for the yoga way, I felt that talking about boundaries would be a great opportunity for us to create the boundaries within our own self, within our own mind. Like we do need boundaries, and we need boundaries with other people, and whether it's with your job or your family or relationships that you're in, you need boundaries to protect your path, right? You, as you're walking your path. I also look at it too is looking at it from the internal way. So yoga, we go inside. We have this deeper, we start to build this deeper awareness inside, which is why the more and more you practice, the more and more stuff will come up. The more things will come up, because things that you never felt, that you never thought of would bother you or have an effect on you, you realize years down the road that actually it actually shaped you in a certain way, positive, negative, whatever it is. So when it comes to personal boundaries of, looking at the way that you have this relationship with your own mind and recognizing where you can put some of the boundaries with your mind. And because in yoga, we believe in your body, your energy, your mind, your heart, your intuition, and your soul. So if your mind is always in play and running your life, perhaps it's time to start creating some boundaries and letting your mind know you don't have to be in control so much. Let's let the intuition come in. Let's let our soul guide us. Let's let our path reveal itself as opposed to fighting so hard to bulldozer it. You know?
Yes. So I mean, I've been on the yogic path, I would say like really like since 2010. And I had a very rough patch 2014, 15, and I couldn't change anything about my life. And then I was like, the only thing I can change is my mind. And it is really connected to Capricorn, Saturn, discipline. So each time I started having a negative thought, I was like, stop.
Mm.
First, I had to realize it's going on. Then a little later, I was able to say stop. And then later, I was able to turn it around and it really got better. So, but I think this is really also connected to yoga. I mean, it's not just a physical exercise of yoga, but it's first of all, you observe what's going on, right? You become more aware of what's going on in your mind, in your body, energetically, all of that stuff. And then in class, like yoga is always teaching us for life. So sometimes I am very ambitious, Capricorn, but I need some boundaries because maybe the body physically is not that well today. So I need to say, okay, I need the boundary of taking a pause now, and I'm not going to do the next pose. And sometimes it's just the opposite, right? So sometimes I want to be stuck and not work so hard. And then I'm like, no, I feel really good. So actually I should push myself to try something that I usually don't. So it goes both ways, but it definitely teaches us about boundaries, how to interact with them, how to build them or break them.
Mm-hmm. And it's that inner awareness where, like, sometimes I remember being more on the beginner yoga side as a student and having certain teachers who would make it sound like you have to push yourself. You have to do crow pose because you have to do bakasana. You have to try it. You have to get out of your comfort zone. And I remember being very, so just I'm sharing this in case people out there are like beginners on their yoga journey and have a teacher who they feel like they have to do this. And then they walk out of the classroom feeling bad about themselves because they don't want to, or they just are not in that space, or their body's not ready for it. Is That's the other boundary that you have to create. You have, even if it's a yoga teacher where you trust them, and you're like, oh, but you're my yoga teacher, I should trust you. Yeah, you should trust them to a certain point. Never trust anyone bigger than trusting yourself. Right. And that's what yoga is trying to bring us back to. Like, you know, having teachers that will guide you. What are they guiding you towards? Yourself, your inner self. So it's this feeling of recognizing, yeah, I want to push myself, but I also need to respect where I'm at. You know, what happens tomorrow if you have an injury? What happens tomorrow if you get sick? Your yoga practice changes because you can't do a downward facing dog. No, your yoga practice most likely will get stronger if you can keep your mind, not even just your mind, but you keep the understanding of your yoga practice is here for this expansion process. So, sometimes you have to create that boundary with other people and with your own mind.
I love how you mentioned respect because like boundaries have to do with respect, right? I put up boundaries because I respect myself.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really a good important part. And when we talk about this side of Capricorn where you reflect backwards in time on something emotional, I mean, it's very close to that topic because there's so much emotional stuff coming up when you really do yoga. Even if you just want to go for physical exercise, you cannot prevent that, with moving because we put so much stuff in our bodies, like, emotions that we don't want to look at. And once we start moving in these ways, all that gets freed up. So we have to deal with certain things
Mm-hmm.
and look backward and maybe reflect where is it coming from, because obviously that emotion was not built in this moment. It's just something old that came up.
Right. And emotions, as I've been listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza now for a bit, I've been I've been absorbing his book Supernatural. He calls emotions energy in motion. So if you have an emotion and it's inside, it's something you haven't processed yet, and then you're starting to process it, that's a lot to feel. That's a lot to feel. That's a lot to be present with.
As for emotions, I had actually a very interesting reading with Sam Gappy, who's an Vedic astrologer, last week, and we talked about emotions. So I have the moon in my first house, which means, I identify a lot with my emotions. And his reading was really interesting because it was so connected to the soul. So he was like, the soul is never the emotions, like the emotions is something on this 3D plane we go through, and we should just learn like how to let it move through us and not identify like, when I'm sad, that's not me, because the soul is never sad. I have this experience. So like there is a certain desire to have like uplifting experiences or be happy, and all of this is just the ego, because the soul is never unhappy. So it was really an interesting reading. He was like, if you're at this point still stuck in this, that you're dealing with so many emotions, uh, maybe go back and meditate more on your heart, because the soul, and that's what we do in meditation, right? We go back to the core that's actually unaffected of this.
Totally. Because it's never dying. There's no old, there's no age, there's no limit, there's no time. There's Your soul is eternal. Your
And
light's eternal.
Capricorn and Saturn often is like, the tough teacher, the hard lesson. So I don't know if it helps other people out there, but for me, when I go through something that is really difficult, I'm like, okay, I really accept that my soul chose this lesson, and I could rebel against it and say, I don't want it, but like, as Sam said, the emotion you have, try to let it go through you, and I accept the lesson. And I mean, that's what we're here for, for all the lessons, right?
All the lessons, ways to evolve. That's also our spiritual practice. I think that's what makes our spiritual practice so it's very personal, because it's not on the outside of you, it's on the inside. So it's very, very personal, but it's also very challenging, because when I feel that people, when they're on a spiritual path, they feel that their challenges and lessons should get less and less, thinking that it's going to get less and less. And buckle up, buttercups. It doesn't get less, it gets more, because you're trying to evolve, 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 so it's, yeah, buckle up, buttercup.
I I heard a good analogy once, that it's like a video game, a computer game, where like, oh, you managed this level, now it gets just so much faster and more difficult. It's like, it's not getting easier, like,
So,
master this, so buckle up. It's getting
yeah,
harder, harder.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And but that's something that's very interesting, like with Saturn, with time, and having this sense of, having to sit in the fire and wait for the blessings, and having to be very patient. You can't read about patience. You can't read about these things. It's all theory. You can't even read about an emotion passing through you until you sit, close your eyes, or your eyes could be open, it doesn't matter, but experience it. Yeah, life is an experience. So my brother and his fiance, they went on this trip to Turkey, and they were on a sailboat in Greece. I mean, come on, like, they were just traveling through the different islands. And I'm using this kind of like, because it's so fancy, it's so great. And but what was funny is, prior to my brother leaving, he just felt like, well, I don't know if I really want to go, because I said, well, no, nothing can prepare you for your senses being in the situation. You can watch a movie, you can read a book, because nowadays video, like, we can just type in any place you want to see it and you can see it. But it doesn't touch your senses. Like, it may be just your eyes, but not the smell, not the taste, not the touch, not your soul being there, or like you being there. So when you're working through, when you're working through your stuff, it's like life is such this beautiful experience and you have to be experiencing it. So, and it might take a lot of time. You might need a lot of patience and all of this jazz, but that's actually a blessing and a privilege.
And they say Capricorns, they get more successful and powerful throughout life. And that's Saturn, right? Saturn is actually the tough lesson, but he's also very much rewarding you when you do the hard work and you learn the patience and you don't take shortcuts and you stay on a good path. Then he's rewarding you, because then with Saturn you can really rise in your position too. Yes. So it pays off, the path.
Definitely does. Definitely does. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine yourself. Oh no. Oh, so yeah. So homework, right? Were you about to say homework? So things that pay off through your lessons. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. And imagine that you stay on your spiritual path, you stay in your practice, or you stay on your yoga practice, you're staying in your astrology lessons, whatever it is. Just imagine yourself 5 years from now. And because you've been disciplined and focused and patient, just imagine where you're going to be 5 years from now if you stay on your path. That's your homework. Visualize yourself.
And maybe a second one too, because
Mm.
I like the topic of boundaries. Just reflect on your boundaries. Are they still all appropriate? Is it
Mm.
still time for them, or time to renew them? Maybe you need to sharpen them or making them a little bit more loose. So just reflect a little bit.
I like
What's
it.
the boundary? Yes.
I like it. Great. Always a pleasure. Let's bring our palms together at our heart center. One breath in together. And remember, let's take that exhale, double the length. So as you breathe in, and then really breathe out all the way down to the bottom of your belly. Like string out those lungs. Just breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out. And then release your hands, open up your eyes. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time. Bye, everybody.